feels good to beat y'all. Yeah, beat y'all.
What's up, beautiful people? Thank you for tuning in to the first official episode of Beats Per Minute podcast, where hip hop, health, and heart are in sync. This is your host, Miss Thursday.
And this is your co-host, Tayrn. And I'm just going to start by asking you, Mom, what was the moment that made you fall in love with hip-hop?
The moment that made me fall in love with hip hop, I would say, is the first time I heard Eric B. for President. You know, there had been other moments in hip hop that was great, but Eric B. for President was that song that made me realize that this wasn't just music I was hearing, but music that I wanted to hear. And it just was everything to me. Like, hip hop truly is like so ingrained in my life, like your memories and everything. So the parties, it was like, your conversations with people was going to be about like the latest song or the latest video, how we dressed, how we danced, everything. Like, hip hop was, is still just such a big part of my life. So what about you?
Well, it was the Beware of the Dog album.
Beware of the Dog by
Lil
Little Bow Wow.
You
Okay.
know it, because at that time, I was determined to be Mrs. Little Bow Wow. And so...
At 5.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Because Puppy Love had dropped. And that music video, I still hold it very dear and near to my heart.
Okay.
Because you had Solange in the video.
Mm-hmm.
You had the little puppies in the video.
Mm-hmm.
You had the mansion that nobody knew Lil Bow Wow lived at by himself. It was Jermaine Dupri in the video. And I just knew I wanted to be around that energy. Whatever that energy is, I wanted it. And that was also around the time where, I had begged you to perm my hair. Because, grandma told me that Lil Bow Wow was going to love my hair perm. So I was crying and stuff, but I just knew that Lil Bow Wow was going to love my hair.
Gotcha.
So I would say that was the moment I knew.
So I actually owe Little Bow Wow for all the stress.
You sure do.
That I had to go through.
Yes.
With putting that first permit. Mm-hmm. It's all his fault.
It wasn't just for me. It was just for Lil Bow Wow.
Oh, okay. I got you. Well, people, if you have not realized by now, my co-host is my daughter. And I just enjoy having conversations with her. We go deep in many, many different directions. So you will hear that in the upcoming episodes. But thank you, Tayrn, for being here with me and for going on this journey with me. And I truly appreciate you.
All right. Well, since we talk about journeys, why have you, what was the concept behind the podcast? What was the intention behind this podcast?
Well, after Uncle Collins passed, and for those that don't know, my brother Collins, Leysath, is also known to the world as DJ Ready Red from the Ghetto Boys. And after he passed away, I wanted to be able to do something as a nurse, as someone who cares deeply for people. I wanted to just be of service to others. And for me, when my brother passed away, I started noticing, I think, more. So many of the hip hop legends, different artists, people within the hip hop community, they were passing away from preventable diseases. And I just wanted to be able to find a way to be able to increase health awareness, have conversations with hip hop artists about real life issues that they're going through, increase health literacy and equity within our community, and also just give encouragement to the rest of the hip hop community that may be going through things and realize that some of the stories that we aren't aware of, how they can also help us in our day-to-day life.
Okay. So, when we were discussing like creating the podcast, you came to me and you said that this podcast would be basically based on three pillars: hip hop, health, and heart.
Right.
What about those three concepts were I want to it's very I want to say, what about those three concepts kind of came up with like the inception of what this is going to be?
Okay. Well, hip hop, like I said, is so much a part of my history, my present, my future, if you will, because as long as I've been alive, hip hop has been alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I really am grateful for so many of the people in the hip hop community that really kind of helped me get through my grief and depression when Uncle Collins passed away. That this was my way of giving back to them. This was my way of making sure that they stay good, that they're good, and that their families also have a place to be able to talk about how they felt. Those that have had loved ones pass away. Health, because as a nurse, this is what I do. We constantly are talking with patients' families, giving them education to help them not only manage different health issues they might have, but how to prevent them. And the heart is just matters of the heart. Being able to have a platform where other people can come and talk about what they've been through, how they've gotten through it, to encourage other people, even just to talk about grief. We don't talk about how we really feel when we lose a loved one and someone that possibly was in the limelight, if you will, or the spotlight. And I want to just be able to give other families that platform.
Okay. And since we all know that people deal with grief and loss differently, I know how I felt in that moment, finding out that Uncle Collins had passed. Of course, being your daughter, I watched you go through your grief. But can you share with our listeners on how just losing him affected you and what you were feeling in that moment?
It was really crazy because it was such a great day in my mind. Just starting out, I was working night shift at the time, if you remember, and I had, woke up from my nap. I was going to have lunch with my first boyfriend's parents that was here celebrating their anniversary. Had a great conversation with, my sister, and was planning on going over there to let her trim my hair because I was scared to go to somewhere around here because they had messed me up before.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sitting there, I'm chilling, we're having lunch, we're laughing, we're, enjoying the day. And I noticed I had a missed call from cousin Brian. And I'm like, okay, I'll call him, because we're wrapping up. And then the next thing I know, Joe is calling, our cousin Joey. And so I'm like, okay, hold on, let me take this call. And I think my immediate reaction was I went straight into shock when he said it because my mind started trying to figure out, now what was I supposed to do. I don't even remember saying bye. I remember they were so worried about me in that moment, and I was so worried about Aunt Kim and y'all that I couldn't even think about like what they just said. So my immediate response was trying to get to Aunt Kim and tell her, and trying to figure out how to get y'all over there, because I had made the promise to Ashley, your older sister, that I would not call and say that someone else has passed like I had to do in the past. And it took about 25 minutes before the realization of what this was all about, that I was literally on my way to my sister's house to tell her that our brother was gone. That for me, that moment for me, I felt like, my heart stopped in that moment. I never ever really thought or contemplated in my mind what life would look like without Uncle Collins being here. Oh, him being 10 years older than me, he was my everything. He was a giant, like literally and figuratively in my life. And he was the person that I could go to about anything, and was the person that, made things better even when they weren't. He just always seemed to know. He always just seemed to know what to say, even if it was nothing more but except to make me laugh. And I was devastated. I was devastated because I lost my brother. But what I was not prepared for was I was not prepared for the world losing DJ Ready Red.
Yeah.
When I got those phone calls from Houston, and the first time that I spoke to Willie D, I had no idea what was coming when he asked me about making a video to let everyone know that Collins had passed. And like, do you remember, like, even that moment of, like, we're dealing with just us as a family losing Collins, and then going online and you guys seeing, like, that this had went viral? Like, do you remember how that felt for you?
Um. Yeah. So I remember it was that Friday,
Right.
and what I've never really talked about with anybody is that morning. It's like that morning I would have like this work routine
Mm-hmm.
where I would get stuff ready for that day. And I remember for some reason I just like my playlist for that day, like my morning playlist for that day was just like all gospel songs,
Mm-hmm.
all of them. And like there was a point where I was standing in like the elevator at work, and I got really teary eyed, and I was listening to like Kirk Franklin, Awesome God. So I was like, why am I crying? Like, why am I about to cry in this elevator? And so I go through the day, and I got off work early. So I came home,
Mm-hmm.
and I was at home by myself at that time. And so I remember you called, and you had me, you had Ashley and Shania, which are my sisters,
Mm-hmm.
and all of us were on three-way. And I can remember you saying, like, very clearly that Uncle Collins has passed away. And there was like a silence kind of on the phone when you said it. And I could remember like it literally felt like somebody had just punched me. Like all the air I had in my body was completely gone,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, first of all, this is such a random, like, this is so random. Like, I'm just going through like my day, and like somebody that was that important is gone.
Right.
And so I could remember like it was it might have been an hour or so before anybody got home, because you still had to drive from Aunt Kim's house, which was like an hour. Ashley hadn't gotten off of work yet. And I remember one of my coworkers had texted me and was just like, "Hey, what's going on? Because, your sister, she not doing good at all." And I'm just like, "We just found out our uncle is gone." And I'm just like, I don't know. It was like a long time where I just kind of, but I don't even remember like crying when I found out. I think I was just in shock.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, I don't know, like I never thought like the everything that would happen after that, like, was kind of like surreal,
Mm-hmm.
where it made it hard for all of us to kind of like just really have like the emotional moment that we should have had with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah, it was like really crazy. I remember waking up that Saturday morning, and at that point, you guys had been on like Facebook and everything, but
Mhm.
I had not. Like, I posted a picture of us. I said that my heart was broken and like I literally couldn't go back 1 year. And so I I was not seeing like how much was being said and being shared on social media. But that Saturday morning, I woke up and my eyes were like just closed. I could barely open my eyes. They were like swollen shut. They burned so bad, and I was supposed to work that weekend, and I had to call, and everything. So I went to go get coffee, and I get to Wawa, and someone is passing by playing, as crazy it is, like balls in my word. And I called one of my homies and just was screaming in their ear. Like
I
I couldn't even
remember
say anything. Like I just was
I
screaming.
went with you. I had went with you. When we went to Wawa, I went with you because at that time I was kind of scared that like it was very I think like at that time I want to say like of course we were heartbroken, but if anything we were more like worried about you
Mm.
just because it's like I've seen you deal with stress, but I've when you deal with devastation, it scares us. So I think at that time, like I did not want you going anywhere by yourself. And I remember that was the I think that was the moment where I had heard that song play in my head.
Mm.
And I don't even know if I had ever heard that song before. And I was just like, I get it. I get it. Like that was the moment I got it. Where it was just like I knew that like he saw what was going on.
Which song are
It
you talking
was
about?
My Testimony by Marvin Sapp.
Gotcha.
And that song just random it played in my head and I'm like like I have never heard that song
Mm.
before then. So in my mind I'm just like there is no way that this can't be him. And so I remember when we got back to the house, I listened to the song and I was just like I get it. This is him. Just from everything that the song was talking about, I'm like, this is him.
Yeah.
And
Because I mean, like, even when we had just saw him a couple months previous, he, um, I could, I could see he was tired. Um, he was pretty devastated because of a work situation, but was still trying to be, Uncle Collins. And I saw how, as time went on, um, like it's even funny how you talked about that Friday morning you listen to the playlist that you listen to. It just almost seems like, in a lot of ways, sometimes God allows us to get prepared for it, even when we don't know we're getting prepared for it. Because I looked back and I noticed how he was starting to distance himself from me. And like the calls became shorter, they weren't as frequent. And like even myself, like I wasn't on social media enough to notice like everybody else. Because the thing that was so crazy was people were like already calling that Friday without even knowing what was going on because they noticed that he had not been posting. And they're like, this isn't him, um, his job. They knew something wasn't right because he didn't show up. And that was what was really crazy for me. Do you remember like just like even with dealing with um him it going viral, how they actually just completely messed it up and had a picture of DJ Red Alert instead of his picture there saying that he had passed.
So, yeah, I think that was kind of when I really like broke. Cause like before that, I feel like I was sad, but like I had stopped crying at that point. And I think when I saw that, I just broke. Like I'm like I went in my room and I'm just laying in the dark and I'm crying. And I remember I called my best friend and I was just like, I can't protect him. I cannot, like, I can't protect him. And she's just like, what are you talking? And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I can't protect him anymore. This is not like, I can't fix this. And like, for some reason, that idea that it's just like, this was wrong. Like, this, the wrong information and like even like the details of like them saying that like it was a heart attack, we didn't even discuss like what had happened at that point. So like for us to be like, okay, so this is not even the right person, and like y'all didn't even check to see like, and I was so angry because I'm just like, do y'all know like what we are going through at this point in time? Like y'all are telling these stories and you don't care that there are people that have literally lost this person. And so because like we're going through this, it was a moment where we were just like, you don't understand how this feels. And that was the moment I felt like we all realized that dang, like if this is how it feels when like somebody loses somebody, this is like the worst experience. Like this is awful because you don't think about like the times where something like that has happened and you might have like been like, oh dang, this is sad. Like you don't realize like how many people rush to write these articles,
Yeah.
and they may be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of the experiences where I feel like it probably contributed to why I'm even part of this with you is because like now I understand there's a level of empathy that I feel like now I have, a level of understanding that now I have. And so if anything else, that's probably why I would say I decided to do this with you, even though I'm not like that type of like I be talking, but like I don't be talking with like strangers and stuff like that. So
Am I a stranger? Like, what are you talking about?
no, you my mom, but you know, it's very different having a conversation with you when it's just us, and then when it's finna be people listening.
Gotcha. And that's why this is important to me, because even going through Uncle Colin's passing, it made me hyper aware of other hip hop legends, different people in the hip hop community that have contributed so much to this culture, witnessing their families go through the same thing. I saw with his partner, Bushwick Bill, when he passed, it was this rush to put out that Bill passed and he hadn't passed yet. And my heart broke for his family and the people that, were around him and loved him. Just even imagining what that felt like when you log into Instagram or Facebook and you're seeing millions of people saying, rest in peace to your family member. And you're like, no, they're not gone yet. Yeah. Even with Ecstasy from Houdini and witnessing some of the conversation surrounding his family having to do a GoFundMe for his funeral. There's so many different aspects of when, someone loses their family member that you already have to grieve, but then you possibly have to deal with it on a different level when they've had some sort of fame or success that nobody, really addresses or think about, because nowadays we live in a society where, people want to put information out first. They want to be the first ones to say, they want to be the first ones to do, and there's no empathy and no, care in making sure that the information is even correct.
Now, with all of that being said, I would say that would be, this conversation has been our segue into the next part of this conversation that you'll have with Kyle. Can you briefly just let them know what to expect from that episode?
Absolutely. So the next episode, we will be sitting down and talking with Kyle Eustace, who's a veteran music journalist. She's the senior editor for Hits Magazine. Wrote for many, many years for Hip Hop DX, and also freelances for Rock the Bells and a lot of other great publications out there. And Kyle was the first person who I was able to actually, like I stated before about the mix up with DJ Red Alert, she was the one that dealt with that conversation. And over the years, me and Kyle have become really, really close and good friends. And I've just watched how she has always continued to make sure that she covers the stories of some of the hip hop legends that have passed away, making sure that their stories are told correctly and accurately.
Telling story with care.
Yeah. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and we will definitely be back with a great conversation with Kyle Eustace, and that will be the second part of
the Hip Hop and Grief conversation.
Right. Be on the lookout for part 2 of our Hip Hop and Grief conversation with Kyle Eustace. Thank you so much for tuning in to this first episode of Beats Per Minute podcast, where hip hop, health, and heart are in sync.
Hello, little sister. How are you? Very proud of you and your accomplishments.